Hello, so it's a slightly wet and wild April morning and I've come down to Cooperized in Feltham, which is a KTM dealer, but they also have a dyno and a very experienced dyno tuner, Ken, who runs the place. So reasons for coming somewhere else, I'd like to remove one of the variables, that being the dyno itself. This one is a Dynojet. I've also made a couple of changes to the bike to see if that changes what's going on with the fueling. I've done the flapper mod on the front inlets. So that flap is now permanently open, and I've removed the cladding from the around the baffle in the exhaust, because it's possible that may have been blocking something somehow if it had been over the edge of the baffle itself. Dyno Run came out with 106 at the back wheel. He thinks the bike's actually running too lean, and that we may have had some sensor issues previously. So he's chucking some fuel in it and seeing what happens. And the other thing worth pointing out as well is, given that the only mods done to the bike would improve power through removing any possible cladding and the flapper mod, it does seem that this dyno is at least 10 bhp more conservative than the Fuchs that it went on previously.
This is Jaeger, this is Zeus. They are quite strong, quite big, 12-stone Rottweilers.
So after digging around in the airbox and discovering that the trumpets underneath the secondary injectors were loose, reattaching all of that, going again, finally coming out with a run of 118, which is better, but there is still stuff going on, clearly. So next thing we did was remove the baffle, which I'd previously put into the bike. Now this baffle is the correct baffle for this exhaust as supplied by Yoshimura, but look at that pea shooter little end on it. So after that run, putting that baffle back in, 138 at the back wheel, and then time to start tuning on the power commander, we are starting to get into the right space.
Yeah, I'm just having a word with the old governor, like, you know what I mean? He's getting out.
And finally, this is where we got to, 146 at the rear wheel, baffle out. Pretty good, certainly in the right ballpark, especially if we consider that this is a conservative dyno. We might be looking to get at least 10 horsepower more than that on a different one, like that Fuchs. I would expect to get maybe 160 on that, but we can try putting it back on there in the near future and see if that theory is supported. The other line you can see in here is baffle in, 143 horsepower and slightly higher torque. For what it's worth, having ridden the bike since, with the baffle is actually a bit more rideable around town. That torque and that smoothness at lower revs actually helps, having that bit of back pressure. But when you open it up and you're on the track, you can tell that it's a bit feistier without it. But overall, for general rideability, it's probably worth leaving the baffle in, apart from the fact it does make the bike ludicrously quiet. So next thing to do, and next video I'll put up, will be going back to the original dyno and actually just doing a comparison without any hard mods done to the bike at all. A little bit of running, admittedly, but take it back there and actually just see what these two dyno graphs look like compared to each other, and let's just see what that AFR looks like as well on that original dyno, because maybe that was just miles out. And if it still seems to be miles out with this current map, then we'll know that actually there's something with that AFR reading that's errant in the first place. So that'll be next. Don't know when it'll be, but hopefully soon.